In the heart of China stands not a mountain or a hill, but something that could dwarf even the Great Pyramid of Giza in size. Pilots saw it shining like a mirror of the gods, but the Chinese government sealed off the entire area, erasing it from maps. Why? Because what lies beneath this white pyramid could rewrite the entire history of humanity. Revelation from the sky. In the spring of 1945, as the war was drawing to a close, an American pilot named James Gausman was flying over the mountains of Shanxi province. He was returning to base after a mission, flying over a silent valley devoid of roads, settlements, or even traces of human life. It was there that a strange light piercing the clouds caught his eye. At first, he thought it was simply the reflection of the sun on the snow. But the lower the plane descended, the clearer it became that this was no natural phenomenon at all. Amid the green hills stood a gigantic pyramid, so perfectly shaped that it looked almost unreal. Its sides were perfectly smooth, as if polished to a mirror shine, and its summit shone so brightly, as if it were covered in white stone or metal. Gausman circled the structure several times. He noted in his log that the pyramid reached a height of approximately 300 meters, with its base exceeding 450. Even the Great Pyramid of Egypt seemed a miniature replica in comparison. The structure's surface appeared snow-white, as if covered in a layer of limestone reflecting the sun. It seemed as if the structure itself radiated light, filling the valley with a pale glow. The pilot remembered that there was nothing around the pyramid, no trees, no ruins, no roads. It stood completely alone, as if forgotten by time. Gausman sketched it, wrote down the coordinates, and continued on. But a strange feeling was growing within him. He had seen something that shouldn't have existed. When he returned to base, he described the incident in detail and reported it to command. A few days later, he was summoned and sternly ordered not to mention what he had seen. The report was classified, and the pilot himself never received an official response. He later recalled that he was certain it was no illusion or mirage. The pyramid was real, and its dimensions surpassed anything humanity had ever built. 2 years passed. In the spring of 1947, another American pilot, Maurice Shahan, flew over the same area. He too saw the same pyramid. This time, the pilot managed to take several black and white photographs, which later spread around the world. The photographs sparked a storm of discussion in the press. Newspapers wrote about the great discovery of the East, archaeologists debated the structure's origins, and the public demanded proof. Some believed the Americans had discovered the oldest human monument. Others insisted it was simply an observational error. But the photographs left no doubt. They clearly showed smooth edges, a white glow, and a shadow cast from the apex at the same angle as the pyramids at Giza. Numerous researchers compared the structure's proportions with Egyptian models and concluded that the Chinese pyramid was significantly taller. However, the talk soon died down. After the war ended, the area where the mysterious structure was located was completely closed to foreigners. Chinese authorities declared that no white pyramids existed, and that all the pilot's stories were a misunderstanding. Official sources claim they were merely ancient burial mounds from the Qin dynasty, covered in light-colored clay. But since then, the mystery of the White Pyramid has only deepened. Later, Soviet specialists flying over the area also mentioned strange, symmetrical hills. And in the 21st century, satellite images confirmed the existence of dozens of pyramidal structures near the city of Xi'an. Some of them reach 100 meters, while others, judging by measurements, may be even larger. But access to them remains restricted, and no expedition has received official permission to excavate. The mystery that began in the skies over Shanxi remains unsolved to this day. The White Pyramid has become a symbol of forbidden archaeology, a reminder that China's past holds secrets that could change our understanding of human history. Photos that were not allowed to be published. In the spring of 1947, the skies over China once again witnessed an event that would later be called the beginning of one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of the 20th century. An American pilot named Maurice Shahan was on a humanitarian mission delivering food and medicine to remote areas of the country when his plane flew over the same region as James Gausman 2 years earlier. The sun was setting behind the mountains, and the air was filled with a soft golden light, when something so grandiose appeared directly below him that he momentarily lost control. In the middle of a valley shrouded in fog, a huge pyramid rose up, shining as if made of polished stone. Its edges were smooth and symmetrical, and its summit shimmered with a white glow, as if reflecting the sun's last rays. Shahan, recalling the stories of other pilots, realized it was no illusion. He pulled an old camera from its holster and took several shots trying to keep the plane on course. At the time, He had no idea that these images would become the most controversial and classified photographs of their generation. Returning to base, he developed the film. The black and white images clearly showed a gigantic pyramid standing in the middle of a valley, surrounded by hills and empty plains. One image in particular struck everyone who saw it. The pyramid's apex was cut off by a horizontal line, as if the top of the structure had been perfectly squared. Scientists would later note that this structural element bore a striking resemblance to ancient temples of Central America and Mesopotamia, further confusing the story. When the photographs hit the press, the Western world froze. Newspapers in America and Europe vied with each other to publish articles about the White Pyramid of Shanxi, comparing it to the pyramids of Egypt and Mexico. Archaeologists debated, and military officials tried to understand how such a structure could have remained unknown for millennia. Reporters called the pyramid the eighth wonder of the world, and in London and New York, the possibility of a joint expedition was discussed. It seemed humanity was on the threshold of a new discovery, one that could rewrite our understanding of ancient architecture. But the joy was short-lived. A few weeks later, the photographs suddenly disappeared from the newspapers. Editors received notices of a temporary publication ban, and scientists who had mentioned the pyramid in their papers began receiving letters demanding they cease their research. Official statements claimed the photographs were fake, their origin unconfirmed. However, not a single photographer involved in the publication admitted to the falsification. Meanwhile, Shahan was interrogated, and his original films were confiscated by the military. He later recounted that command officials explained this by saying the photographs were of interest to foreign intelligence services. The pilot was strictly forbidden from discussing the incident publicly, and all copies of his reports were destroyed. However, one of the photographs miraculously survived. Its publication in an American newspaper in the late 1940s caused a sensation and became the only reliable evidence of the existence of a giant pyramid in central China. The story might have ended there, if not for dozens of testimonies from other pilots claiming to have seen the same thing. In the immediate post-war years, hundreds of transport planes flew over China, and many pilots reported strange, geometrically perfect hills in the Xi'an region. These accounts matched every detail: the pyramidal shape, the white sheen, the absence of settlements nearby. Some reports even mentioned several pyramids, one of which was significantly taller than the others. At the same time, control over all archaeological sites in China was tightening. After the new authorities came to power, any exploration of ancient sites became a state prerogative. The area where the pilots claimed the White Pyramid was located was declared a closed military zone. Foreigners were prohibited from entering, and Chinese archaeologists were required to coordinate every step with the government. Any attempts to explore the site ended with the disappearance of data and silence. Since then, Maurice Chahan's photographs have become almost mythical relics. Some researchers claim they proved the existence of a gigantic structure hidden underground. Others believe the images are distorted by perspective and depict an ordinary hill covered in limestone clay. But the first theory is supported by a strange fact. All maps of this region in the mid-20th century were suddenly changed, and the coordinates listed in pilots' reports ceased to exist in official documents. Later, at the end of the 20th century, independent explorers attempted to retrace Shahan's route. Some claim to have used satellite images to discover the outlines of a pyramid resembling the structure described by the pilot. It stood amidst the mountains, partially covered by earth and vegetation, and its proportions were indeed close to those described in the initial reports. But the Chinese authorities, as before, remained silent. Today, those old photographs, taken by a random military pilot back in 1947, are considered an archaeological icon that science has never dared to officially recognize. They remain as a reminder that Earth's history still holds secrets, and that some discoveries prove too dangerous to be revealed to the world. And while the White Pyramid remains hidden deep within China's soil, its first photographs continue to stir the imagination, like a silent reproach to a civilization that saw a miracle and decided to hide it. Exclusion zone. Following publications in the mid-1940s, the area of Shanxi province where American pilots had seen the giant White Pyramid suddenly disappeared from maps. Official maps replaced the aforementioned valleys with a closed zone. Chinese authorities explained this as a need to protect cultural heritage. But with each passing year, this protection increasingly resembled a complete lockdown. By the early 1950s, all foreign archaeological expeditions had been called off. Any attempt to enter the mountainous regions north of Xi'an ended with researchers being turned away by military patrols. Even Chinese scientists could only access the area with special permits, which were almost never granted. On paper, everything seemed simple. The government was concerned about the preservation of the ancient imperial burial mounds. But the more journalists and historians delved into the rationale behind this regime, the more it resembled not concern, but a deliberate cover-up. China's official position was that the pyramid reported in Western newspapers was not gigantic at all, but rather one of hundreds of ancient burial mounds dating back to the Qin and Han dynasties. All of them were supposedly constructed of clay and earth, and their white sheen was attributed to the properties of the limestone coating. There was no talk of any stone cladding, especially one hundreds of meters high. And yet, when the first aerial photographs appeared in the 20th century, satellite images began to reveal regular geometric shapes that could not have been present in simple burial mounds. In the 1970s, several foreign diplomats traveling through central China mentioned in their reports strange, perfectly smooth mountains arranged in a triangular wedge along a valley. Their photographs were quickly confiscated, and visits to the region were terminated without explanation. China remained silent, but its silence only heightened interest. The White Pyramid gradually became a legend, not just an archaeological site, but a symbol of a forbidden secret, forbidden to be touched. One of the few local archaeologists who managed to get close to the pyramid's presumed location was Professor Yang Zhenjing. In the late 1980s, he published a short report cautiously describing unusual structures discovered during a geodetic survey north of Xi'an. He noted that some of these hills had slopes and orientations consistent with those of the Egyptian pyramids. However, within a few months, all copies of his work were removed from libraries, and Yang himself ceased his public activities. Local residents living near the valley reported that the military repeatedly erected fences around the perimeter and even patrolled the area at night. Sometimes the sounds of machinery could be heard at night, but in the morning the valley was once again plunged into silence. Some said they were bringing geological equipment, while others insisted that even agricultural workers were not allowed in. Many legends arose among the residents of Shanxi. Some said that an ancient emperor rested beneath the pyramid, and any interference would lead to disaster. Others whispered that an artifact discovered during an ancient war of the gods was hidden within, and that the pyramid's white glow was not a reflection of the stone, but energy emanating from the depths of the earth. These stories sounded fantastical, but they reflected a common feeling, a fear of something forbidden and incomprehensible. When satellite images appeared online at the beginning of the new century, interest was rekindled. People from all over the world began searching maps for the very contours described by the pilots. Indeed, dozens of pyramidal formations were identified in the vicinity of Xi'an, many of which matched the shape and proportions of ancient structures from Egypt and Mesoamerica. But each time the researchers attempted to officially confirm their findings, access to this data was blocked. One independent enthusiast, Australian geographer Peter Clare, claimed to have calculated the approximate coordinates of the White Pyramid and sent a request to the Chinese authorities regarding the possibility of conducting research. The response was short and blunt. The object is of no scientific interest. However, Clare published photographs clearly showing a gigantic, perfectly shaped mound with a peak cut off at a right angle. These photographs once again sparked a wave of controversy. Some believed the Chinese government was simply seeking to protect cultural monuments from destruction. Others were convinced that an object was hidden beneath the earth, the origin of which could not be explained within conventional historical frameworks. One thing remained certain: the more the world became interested in the White Pyramid, the more China closed its doors. Thus, the Shanxi region finally became a zone of silence, a place where satellite images lose resolution and official maps disappear from view. The White Pyramid, first spotted from the sky, once again vanished into the clouds of mystery, leaving only vague outlines on old photographs and a cold warning that there are lands that history forbids from being discovered. Traces on satellite images. When satellite technology became available to researchers in the late 20th century, humanity for the first time gained the opportunity to view Earth in a way previously only the gods of ancient legend had. And it was precisely when the first spacecraft began photographing central China that an ancient mystery resurfaced. In images transmitted from orbit, strangely regular shapes emerged among the hills and valleys of Shanxi province, enormous pyramidal elevations with perfectly defined edges and angles unlike anything found in nature. Researchers from Australia, Germany, and Russia noted that these structures are not arranged randomly, but rather in a precise order, as if following a predetermined geometry. Some of the pyramids are aligned, while others form complex constellations reminiscent of ancient astronomical charts. Comparison with star charts revealed a remarkable coincidence. Several pyramids were aligned precisely with the positions of 3 stars in Orion's belt, just like the Egyptian structures at Giza. But the most astonishing discovery was that among the dozens of pyramids captured in the images, one stood out in particular. It was larger, taller, and possessed almost perfect symmetry. Its height, calculated based on the shadow and the angle of sunlight, was approximately 300 meters, and the length of its base exceeded 450. This is twice the length of any known pyramid on the planet. The surface of the structure appeared lighter than the surrounding hills, leading to the hypothesis that it was once covered with white limestone or clay, which reflected sunlight so strongly that wartime pilots could see its glimmer from several kilometers above. In the early 2000s, enthusiasts and independent archaeologists began to unite in online communities, publishing photographs obtained from open sources. Each new image sparked a storm of discussion. Some users claimed the photo revealed a gigantic step structure, while others claimed it was simply the result of a play of light and shadow. But the more photographs appeared, the harder it became to deny the obvious. Objects resembling artificial pyramids do indeed exist among the mountains. A series of photographs taken on a clear day, when the shadows were perfectly angled, attracted particular attention. In one of the photographs, 4 faces converging toward a truncated peak were clearly visible. Adjacent images revealed the summit to be devoid of vegetation, and the soil had a strange, even hue, as if its surface had once been covered with dense stone. Experts analyzing the images concluded that beneath the Earth's surface, perfectly formed stone walls may lie, preserved in shape for millennia. Some unofficial Chinese researchers acknowledge that this region is indeed home to over 100 pyramidal structures, some of which remain unexplored. However, none of them officially acknowledge the existence of the White Pyramid. Government reports continued to refer to these structures as burial mounds from the Qin and Han dynasties. However, foreign archaeologists noted that such mounds could not have had such precise geometry and impressive scale. In the 21st century, satellite imaging technology reached a new level of precision. And once again, the White Pyramid appeared on screens. High-resolution images reveal that the pyramid, hidden underground, is surrounded by areas of leveled soil, as if roads or terraces once existed here. Some lines, stretching for kilometers, form patterns reminiscent of ancient road systems. One gets the sense that this is not a single structure, but part of a colossal complex, perhaps an entire city, buried underground. The publication of such images prompted an immediate response from the Chinese authorities. A few days after the materials were released, the images disappeared from satellite services, and the coordinates became unavailable. Websites hosting the photographs were blocked, and forums were filled with warnings about violations of national security. All of this only fueled suspicions that the authorities were indeed hiding something more than just an archaeological site. Scientists from other countries attempted to explain the phenomenon scientifically. Some suggested that the pyramids were the result of ancient engineering experiments, while others linked them to a lost civilization that predated known Chinese history. More daring theories claimed that the pyramid builders possessed knowledge unmatched even by modern engineers. They knew how to calculate angles so precisely that the structure survived earthquakes, floods, and millennia of erosion. And yet, despite a wealth of evidence and independent research, the White Pyramid remains officially an unconfirmed object. Photos of it disappear, documents are lost, and those who attempt to raise the issue are met with silence. Perhaps the reason is simple. This ancient mystery doesn't fit into the conventional narrative of history. After all, if the White Pyramid truly exists, it means there was another, older, and more powerful civilization beyond known civilizations. And its traces are still visible only to those looking down on the Earth, from the very height from which it was first spotted by a man flying over the mountains of China. The legend of the White Glow. Since ancient times, the people of Shanxi province have told stories of a strange mountain that seemed to glow at sunset, casting a white glow across the entire valley. Elders said this place must not be disturbed, for beneath the earth lay not just the remains of emperors, but the very soul of the land. When the sun sank below the horizon, the mountain's peak began to shimmer with a soft, milky light, as if hidden deep within the stone were a source of ancient energy. These stories were passed down from generation to generation, And long before the war, the peasants living at the foot of the mountains called it the White Pyramid. They said the summit was once smooth and bright, and in the sun's rays it sparkled so brightly that people couldn't look directly at it. Legends claimed that in ancient times it was covered in layers of white stone, reminiscent of limestone or clay, which reflected light even at night when the sky was illuminated by the moon. When American pilots first saw the shining structure, they unwittingly confirmed old legends. Their reports described the same dazzling whiteness that locals had celebrated for centuries. Archaeologists studying later descriptions of pyramidal mounds in Shanxi found references in ancient Chinese chronicles to a mountain of light built for a ruler who wished to ascend to the heavens. One Han Dynasty text contains the strange phrase, "His house faces the sky, and his roof is as white as a cloud." Some historians considered this a poetic image, while others saw it as a direct reference to the pyramid's casing being made of a light-colored material. If these texts are true, the White Pyramid could have been an ancient shrine built as a reflection of the heavenly world. Scholars have suggested that the white clay or lime covering served not only an aesthetic purpose but also symbolized purity, immortality, and the connection between earth and heaven. In Chinese culture, white has always been a symbol of transition and spiritual purification. Perhaps the pyramid's creators intended for its apex to reflect sunlight and be visible from afar, like a path leading to the afterlife. In the 20th century, geologists studying the soil composition in the region discovered traces of calcareous compounds uncharacteristic of the natural landscape. This suggested that the pyramid's surface may indeed have been coated with a layer of white mineral, which over time was eroded by wind and rain, leaving only traces in the soil. Although archaeological work in the area remains prohibited, many researchers are convinced that it is precisely this coating that gives the structure its famous glow, visible even from aircraft. Local legends tell another, more disturbing story. Old tales say that the pyramid once shone so brightly that people began to fear its light, believing it a sign of heavenly wrath. The priests then covered its surface with a layer of earth and sand to conceal the glow and appease the spirits. Some elders still believe the pyramid is alive, breathing underground and occasionally sending light through cracks in the soil, a reminder of its existence. These legends seem like beautiful tales, but they conceal a curious trace of truth. Modern satellite images show that the ground at the top of the White Pyramid is abnormally light. Even under the same lighting, it appears brighter than the surrounding hills. Image processing specialists have confirmed that this area reflects more sunlight than the natural formations nearby, which may indicate an artificial structure beneath the surface. Some researchers have hypothesized that the pyramid was designed as a giant reflector, symbolically connecting heaven and earth. Perhaps in ancient times, it served as a sacred landmark for astronomers, or a site for rituals related to the solar cycle. Comparisons with other ancient structures, such as the pyramids of Egypt or Mexico, show that the idea of creating white or shiny pyramids is found in various cultures around the world. This strengthens the hypothesis that this is not a coincidence, but rather an ancient global tradition lost in the mists of time. The white glow has become more than just a legend, but a part of living memory. People from nearby villages say that sometimes, on certain days of the year, when the sun rises at a particular angle, the mountain's peak once again reflects the light, as if trying to remind them that something great still lurks beneath the earth. And until archaeologists can touch its stones, the White Pyramid will remain a symbol of the light hidden beneath the earth, a light that can blind those who dare to truly see it. Comparison with Egypt. When the first black and white photographs of the White Pyramid appeared in Western archives, researchers couldn't believe their eyes. The structure's contours, its perfect symmetry, and proportions almost exactly replicated the parameters of the Egyptian Great Pyramid of Giza. However, calculations revealed something even more impressive. The Chinese structure could have been twice as tall. While the Great Pyramid of Egypt stands approximately 146 meters tall, the White Pyramid, according to analysis of photographs and shadows cast on the ground, rose at least 300 meters. This meant that somewhere in the heart of Asia lay a building capable of eclipsing the most famous wonder of the world. Archaeologists and engineers from Europe and the United States began comparing photographs of the pyramid with the Giza drawings, and the more they studied the images, the more similarities they found. The angle of the White Pyramid's faces matched the Egyptian ones, almost to 1/10 of a degree. Even the height-to-base ratio followed the classic formula used to build the pyramids of ancient Egypt. Some researchers dismissed this as mere coincidence. Others saw it as a trace of a common lost tradition, possibly dating back to a single source of knowledge that existed long before the emergence of the first civilizations. With the advent of color satellite images, attention to the pyramid has once again increased. Scientists have noticed that it is precisely aligned with the cardinal directions, with the same precision as the Egyptian pyramids. The northern face points directly toward the North Star, which in ancient times required precise astronomical knowledge and observations. This discovery raised a new question. Who could have possessed such knowledge 2,000 years ago, if even the Egyptians achieved this accuracy only after centuries of experimentation? The comparison wasn't limited to architecture. Historians turned to symbolism. In Egypt, white was considered sacred, associated with the sun deity Ra and the idea of rebirth. In Chinese culture, white also symbolized the transition from the world of the living to the world of spirits, purity, and immortality. In both cultures, pyramids were built as gateways between earth and heaven, as a place where spirits could connect with eternal light. This symbolic parallel led some scholars to speculate that their architectural principles may have shared a common spiritual root, dating back to a civilization that existed long before known empires. A more daring hypothesis posits that the ancient Egyptians and Chinese may have interacted through forgotten trade routes or even sea routes connecting east and west long before the Silk Road. This hypothesis is supported by rare finds of Egyptian artifacts in Asia and Chinese ceramics in the Middle East. If these connections truly existed, the White Pyramid could be a reflection of knowledge that traveled with people and then disappeared, leaving only traces in stone. However, mainstream science is reluctant to accept these theories. Chinese archaeologists claim that such similarities are explained by simple laws of physics and the logic of construction. A pyramid is the most stable form for a stone structure, but skeptics cannot explain why the angle, proportions, and orientation match with a precision impossible without complex mathematical calculations. Moreover, according to official data, such engineering methods were not used in ancient China until the advent of the first dynasties. In the 1990s, a group of German researchers attempted to conduct a comparative analysis of the composition of the soil and rocks that may have been used to construct the White Pyramid. They hypothesized that the structure's foundation was volcanic stone, quarried in ancient times from tens of kilometers away. If this is true, its construction would have required incredible effort and transportation technologies, details of which are largely unknown. Some enthusiasts have gone even further, suggesting that pyramids around the world, from Egypt and Mexico to China and Peru, may have been connected by a network of ancient centers aligned along a single line, which astronomers call the ecliptic belt. According to this hypothesis, they were all aligned with specific star constellations and were used not only as temples but also as beacons for celestial observations. If the White Pyramid is truly part of this global network, its existence could revolutionize our understanding of the development of ancient civilizations. It proves that long before written history, humans possessed knowledge that allowed them not only to construct grandiose structures, but also to coordinate their placement within planetary geometry. While archaeologists debate, the pyramids of Egypt continue to shine in the scorching sun, welcoming millions of tourists, while the White Pyramid of China remains hidden beneath the earth and a layer of time. But every new photograph, every shadow cast at the same angle as on the Giza Plateau, reminds us that perhaps human history is not a straight line, but a circle in which everything created is repeated, only in different corners of the earth. The most ancient civilization. Since satellite images confirm the existence of pyramidal structures in Shanxi province, researchers have increasingly begun to speculate that these are not just imperial tombs, but traces of a much more ancient and powerful civilization that disappeared long before the advent of the dynasties. Archaeologists studying the region noted that some burials were no more than 2,000 years old, but the shape, proportions, and scale of the White Pyramid clearly exceeded the construction capabilities of the time. This led many to wonder whether the mound builders had simply repurposed existing ancient structures, erected thousands of years earlier by an unknown people. This theory gained credence after an analysis of soil layers conducted by independent Chinese researchers. They discovered that the rocks at the base of the pyramid were significantly older than the cultural layer dating back to the Han Dynasty, a difference of several millennia. Moreover, microparticles of baked quartz were found in some soil samples, indicating exposure to high temperatures, as if stone processing technologies had once been used here. Such traces could not have been the result of a simple collapse or volcanic activity. In the early 2000s, a group of European historians proposed a new hypothesis, that the White Pyramid may have belonged to a civilization that existed in China long before the first written records, perhaps 10 or even 12,000 years ago. These people, according to the researchers, possessed knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and construction that surpassed the capabilities of their time. And when natural disasters or wars wiped them off the face of the earth, descendants no longer understood the true purpose of these structures and converted them into royal mausoleums. This has been confirmed by the discovery of numerous ancient pyramids around the world. In Turkey, Mexico, Egypt, and Peru, archaeologists have discovered structures remarkably similar in architecture and orientation. All point southwest and are linked to the solar cycle. A coincidence of such magnitude could not have been accidental. Even the angles of the faces, around 51 degrees, are repeated in almost all the pyramids around the world. This has led some scientists to believe that all these structures are the legacy of a single ancient global culture, possibly existing before the last ice age. Ancient Chinese texts also contain hints of this mystery. One chronicle from the Zhou dynasty speaks of a great people descending from the sky, who erected mountains of light to unite the worlds. Modern historians interpret this as a mythological metaphor, but the similarity with the image of the White Pyramid is striking. Legends say these builders used the power of the stars to lift the stones, and that the tops of their structures shone, reflecting heavenly light. Perhaps these very images form the basis of the myths of heavenly gods descending to earth. Some researchers call this hypothetical culture the pre-ancient civilization of Asia. They believe it may have existed in the territory of modern-day China long before the established cultures of Mesopotamia and Egypt. It is said to have left behind a network of pyramids, which later peoples mistook for natural hills. Traces of ancient hydraulic systems and geometrically precise terraces around some Shanxi pyramids confirm that settlements planned with meticulous engineering precision may have existed here in ancient times. There's a more controversial hypothesis that the White Pyramid may have been part of an energy system similar to that described in the legends of Atlantis. According to this theory, the pyramids served not as tombs, but as energy generators or observatories designed to track the Earth's cycles. There's no evidence for this, of course. But the fact remains. The level of mathematical precision and geometry of the White Pyramid remains inexplicable if we consider it the work of simple farmers in ancient China. Archaeologists who adhere to traditional science try to avoid such discussions, dismissing them as pseudoscientific. However, with each passing decade, the arguments against the skeptics grow stronger. Modern ground-penetrating radar studies have shown that some mounds do indeed contain hollow spaces, corridors, and chambers located at an angle, which is typical of pyramidal structures rather than simple burial mounds. Furthermore, magnetic field measurements have revealed anomalous deviations, which may indicate the presence of metallic elements within the structures. If all these data are confirmed, the White Pyramid will prove to be more than just an archaeological site, but evidence of a civilization whose knowledge of geometry, orientation, and construction was at a level humanity would only attain thousands of years later. It may have been the source of those ancient traditions that later spread across the world, from Egypt to Mesoamerica, and while official history remains silent, the White Pyramid remains a stone reminder that human history is much longer than we've come to believe. Every meter of it is like a missing page in a book that no one dares to read to the end, fearing that the answer to the question of its creators will change everything we know about the origins of civilization. Astronomical Center. When the first accurate satellite maps of the Shanxi region became available to researchers, their attention was drawn not only to the shape of the pyramids, but also to their orientation. It turned out that many of them were not built by chance. Their alignments coincided with the positions of the stars and solar paths, and the main one, the White Pyramid, was located precisely at the center of the system, resembling a gigantic astronomical complex. The coincidences were so precise that it became impossible to rule out intentionality. Researchers from Japan and Germany compared the coordinates of the pyramids with ancient star maps and found that their location follows the pattern of stars in Orion's belt, known for its sacred role in the mythologies of various peoples. The Egyptians associated this belt with the god Osiris, the guardian of the afterlife, and the ancient Chinese called these three stars the gateways through which souls ascend to heaven. This suggests that the White Pyramid stood precisely where the central star, Al-Nilam, shone on the celestial projection. This detail changed the perception of the entire story. The White Pyramid may have been more than just a tomb or a symbol of power, but a reference point around which all other structures were built. If we consider the pyramids as part of a vast cosmic calendar, It becomes clear that their positioning allows for the precise determination of the seasons, solar, and lunar cycles, and the dates of equinoxes and eclipses. Modern astronomers have confirmed that some of the pyramid's axes are aligned with the sunrise on the summer solstice. This indicates that the builders possessed a profound understanding of the movements of celestial bodies. To achieve such precision, they must have observed the sky for decades, recorded the slightest changes, and constructed their structures taking the curvature of the horizon into account. This would have been impossible without advanced science and instruments, which officially did not exist at the time. Particularly noteworthy was the discovery of earthen ramparts and terraces around the White Pyramid, which could have served not simply as fortifications, but as observation platforms. Their summits offer views of the horizon in 4 directions, and on certain days of the year, the sun actually rises and sets precisely between lines that coincide with the pyramid's edge. This symmetry was striking in its precision, as if the entire area had been designed as a single mechanism tracking the movements of the sun. Some researchers studying Chinese astronomical texts from the Shang dynasty have noted references to heavenly mansions and stone gates of light, where time-measuring rituals were performed. Perhaps the White Pyramid was such a house of light, a temple where the sun's rays were used to determine calendar cycles and link them to earthly affairs. This is also supported by the fact that the ancient Chinese considered the ruler to be an intermediary between heaven and earth, and his duty was to maintain harmony between the seasons. But there are even bolder theories. Some researchers are convinced that the White Pyramid was not just a calendar, but part of an ancient geodetic system that connected different regions of the planet. They note that if the pyramids of China, Egypt, and Mexico are connected on a global map, their location line almost coincides with the latitude of 33 degrees north, a symbolic zone associated with mystical knowledge in many cultures. This hypothesis is supported by data on magnetic anomalies recorded near the pyramid. Researchers have noted that compass needles behave strangely there. They deviate by several degrees, as if a strong electromagnetic field were nearby. This suggests that the pyramid may have been built not only as an observatory but also as a device that interacts with the Earth's magnetic fields. This theory seems fanciful, but it explains why the builders attached such great importance to the structure's shape and orientation. Perhaps the pyramid truly served as an ancient instrument combining astronomy and the Earth's energy. Written sources also support this. One of the ancient Tang Dynasty manuscripts mentions a mountain of light that absorbs the breath of heaven and gives it to the earth. Today, the White Pyramid remains a closed site, but even without excavations, it continues to amaze researchers with its harmony and precision. Everything indicates that it was not built by chance or for the glory of a ruler. It was a sacred place where heaven met earth, where time turned to stone. And the more science attempts to understand its purpose, the clearer it becomes that before us is not just a monument, but a frozen mechanism, created by an intelligence whose knowledge of the universe still surpasses our own. Our ban on excavations. None of the wonders of ancient China is shrouded in such a dense veil of silence as the White Pyramid. Since the mid-20th century, Chinese authorities have consistently repeated the same thing. No official excavations will be conducted in the Shanxi region. The reasons sound respectable: the preservation of cultural heritage, the protection of sacred sites, and the need to await better technology. But behind this diplomatic formulation lies something more than simple concern for history. Within China, imperial tombs have always been regarded as sacred sites. Disturbing the peace of deceased rulers was considered a recipe for disaster. Opening pyramid-shaped tombs was considered particularly dangerous, as they symbolized the emperor's connection with heaven. According to ancient beliefs, the ruler's spirit continues to control the elements after death, and if its abode is destroyed, the world will be thrown into disarray. Therefore, even modern scholars prefer not to touch such sites, lest they face public condemnation and evoke superstitious fear among the population. But the White Pyramid is unlike all the others. Unlike the famous imperial burial mounds, it has never been officially described, has no status as an archaeological site, and is not listed in the state register. It's as if it doesn't exist. And yet, military patrols guard the site, and journalists and researchers are turned away even at the approaches to the valley. The authorities claim there's nothing special there, but this very denial makes the site even more mysterious. In the late 1980s, several archaeologists from Beijing attempted to initiate an official expedition. They presented a project involving ground-penetrating radar, GPR scanning of the soil, and non-invasive surveys that would not disturb the structure of the hill. However, the project was soon rejected without explanation, and its director lost access to the archives. At the same time, all mentions of the White Pyramid in scientific journals disappeared. Since then, any research on the topic of Shanxi burial pyramids has been automatically censored. Rumors about the reasons for the ban multiply every year. Some claim that beneath the pyramid lies not just a tomb, but an ancient complex with metal structures and technologies incomprehensible to modern science. Others assert that radiation levels inside the structure exceed the norm, meaning its builders used unknown energy sources. There are also more cautious opinions. The authorities fear they won't be able to control the influx of foreigners that will flood the region if the pyramid turns out to be real. There's also a cultural reason. In China, imperial tombs aren't museum exhibits, but sacred symbols of power and ancestors. They can't be opened without good reason. Even the mausoleum of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, opened over half a century ago, remains untouched in its central section. Archaeologists fear damaging the fragile artifacts. And if they're hesitant to open the country's most famous tomb, what can we say about the White Pyramid, whose origins don't fit into any dynasty? However, strange coincidences are beginning to emerge around this silence. Satellite images showing the White Pyramid are disappearing from public databases. Researcher requests are being blocked. Even geographic maps published in different years show different terrain contours in the same location. This has given rise to speculation that the Chinese government is deliberately disguising the pyramid, smoothing out its shape in digital models. Some claim that in real images, the pyramid's top is cut off, and traces of recent excavation work are visible around it, as if someone is trying to conceal the entrance. Chinese authorities officially claim that only agricultural research is being conducted in the region, but nearby villagers tell a different story. They see soldiers appearing at night, hear the hum of machinery, and notice bright lights on the slopes. Several times farmers have attempted to approach the site, but patrols have stopped them and ordered them to return home. They are convinced that something is happening underground that they are not supposed to know about. Archaeologists widely believe that the ban stems less from a fear of destroying antiquity than from a fear of what might be found. If the White Pyramid truly is older than all known structures, and if artifacts are discovered within it that don't fit into the history of Chinese civilization, it would upend not only national, but also world history. For then, it would be revealed that the origins of human culture lay not on the banks of the Nile or in Mesopotamia, but in the heart of Asia, where the silent testimony of that era still remains. Therefore, the White Pyramid remains forbidden. It is guarded, but not studied. It is acknowledged, but not named. It is like a vast book whose pages no one dares open. And the longer it lies underground, the more drawn it becomes to those seeking answers. Perhaps one day technology will allow us to peer inside without destroying its mystery. But for now, the White Pyramid remains a closed equation of history, a formula that no one dares solve. Silence of the earth. Amid the endless plains of Shanxi province, where the wind carries the dust of millennia, the White Pyramid stands motionless, like a vast block of time, frozen between past and present. It cannot be seen on maps, cannot be visited without permission, and certainly cannot be studied. It seems to have chosen its own fate, to remain silent until humanity learns to listen. Its summit, hidden beneath a layer of earth and grass, no longer sparkles as it once did when pilots glimpsed its blinding light. But despite the silence, the presence of something living can still be felt around it, something that continues to hold the memory of bygone eras. Ancient Chinese texts contain images that strangely resemble what is now known as the White Pyramid. One of the oldest manuscripts speaks of a palace of great light standing at the crossroads of the winds where heaven touches earth. Another mentions a mountain that breathes underground and controls the breath of heaven. Scientists long considered these descriptions metaphorical, but now, as geologists detect faint vibrations beneath the pyramids, the ancient words take on new meaning. Perhaps this mountain truly has an inner life of its own, part of a natural or man-made mechanism, long forgotten but still functioning. Some modern studies have shown that the magnetic field in the area exhibits unusual fluctuations, and compasses are unstable, as if metal or another material were hidden within the earth, capable of distorting direction. This has led to a bold hypothesis that the White Pyramid may not be simply a stone structure, but a multi-layered structure, with cavities filled with metallic elements within. It could be an ancient geodetic instrument, a huge resonator, or a place where energy related to the solar Earth cycle was concentrated. But if we examine this phenomenon, not from a scientific perspective, but from the perspective of human perception, the White Pyramid becomes more than just an archaeological mystery. It's a mirror of humanity, reflecting how easily we forget our own past. Over the centuries, people have built cities, destroyed temples, sought gold and glory. But in Shanxi, underground, a reminder of something beyond the ordinary still lies. Each new layer of dust falling on its summit quiets it, but does not erase it. For in history, there is no such thing as complete oblivion. There are only secrets that have not yet been revealed. Many scholars, even those skeptical of legends, acknowledge that the White Pyramid's silence is anomalous. Governments typically seek to transform ancient sites into museums, tourist destinations, and testaments to cultural greatness. But with this pyramid, it's the opposite. The greater the interest, the thicker the veil. This silence doesn't seem careless. It seems deliberate, as if someone or something is trying to protect not only the physical structure, but also what it symbolizes. There's a theory that the Chinese authorities are reluctant to reveal the White Pyramid precisely because it doesn't fit into their cultural chronology. Independent estimates put its age at up to 10,000 years, which challenges the conventional understanding of the origins of Chinese civilization. After all, if it truly is older than all known empires, then the question arises, who built it, and where did these people disappear to? Perhaps this is the reason for such persistent silence. Acknowledging the pyramid's existence means admitting that the history of China and all of Asia begins much earlier than textbooks record. But politics aside, the White Pyramid becomes a symbol of something greater, a symbol of the very concept of memory. It is silent, as are the mountains that have witnessed the birth and fall of civilizations. It preserves not a specific fact, but a sense of antiquity that humans can sense but cannot explain. Even the few who have seen it with their own eyes describe a strange sensation, as if the earth around them were breathing, as if the space were filled with a sound, barely audible but persistent. Perhaps it is simply the wind beating through the grass, or perhaps it is an echo of the force that once compelled people to build this mountain of stone. The archives contain rare recollections of explorers who visited the approaches to the valley. They described a strange odor in the air in the evenings, a mixture of dampness, lime, and iron. At dusk, a barely noticeable glow appears above the horizon, as if the earth reflects not sunlight, but an inner radiance. No one can explain this effect, but there's something alive about it, like the breath of an ancient giant buried beneath the weight of centuries. Some philosophers call the White Pyramid the stone of humanity's memory. They believe there are points in the world where time compresses, concentrating the entire past in a single place. These points don't need to be discovered. They open themselves when humanity is ready to hear their voice. Perhaps this is why the pyramid remains closed. It awaits not archaeologists or tourists, but understanding. It awaits those who can see in it not a mystery, but a reminder. The White Pyramid's silence isn't a refusal to speak. It's a pause as ancient as the earth itself. Its silence speaks louder than any words, for it speaks of a story that is unfinished. Beneath layers of soil and stone, among roots and centuries-old dust, an answer might be hidden, one capable of uniting past and future, east and west, man and heaven. But while people argue, measure heights, and compare photographs, it stands motionless, preserving its radiance within. And perhaps this is precisely what makes it alive. Not a stone, not a tomb, but the heart of an ancient world that continues to beat deep within the earth, demanding nothing but silence. The White Pyramid remains China's most silent mystery, an ancient heart hidden beneath layers of centuries. It needs no words, because its silence speaks louder than any discovery. While people debate its origins, it stands, motionless, unconquered, alive. And perhaps one day the earth itself will decide it's time to tell the truth.